My irresponsible friend took advantage of my kindness for years. I finally evicted her.
Get evicted, irresponsible wench.
Let me start this with my boyfriend and I were put into a very lucky situation with a house. However, it is still in my mother's name and she could easily evict us, especially since she does not know about any of this from me. She may have heard some from neighbors, but that's about it. By the way, this comes from Reasonable Camel 457, and if you want to submit your own stories, go to r/OK Storytime subreddit. So, I, 27 female, and my boyfriend, 24 male, who I'll call John for clarification, have been living in our current house for 3 years. We moved in because my parents owned 2 houses, and my grandma was too old for her own 40 acres of land. So my parents moved my grandma into one house that was paid off, and asked John and me if we wanted to finish paying off the other house while living in it. My mom and I have an agreement where I pay a little less for the mortgage because I have health issues and am unable to work as many hours. The house itself needs a lot of work that John and I are paying for out of pocket, so it was a win-win for everyone. Things changed. But that's just backstory to the real issue. I have a friend, 28 female, who I'll call Jane, who goes away for work every summer. Her long-term relationship ended and she needed a place to stay for the winter with her dog. John and I were happy to share a room in our house and gave her a very reasonable rent fee of $150 a month.
Very reasonable.
Very reasonable.
More like the most reasonable. What?
Dude, that's like a climbing membership in a more expensive place. The room was very small, but she had her own full bathroom and basically the entire upstairs to herself. She had a full bathroom and the entire upstairs for $150 a month.
For $150 a month?
That's
right.
insane.
I'll take that deal.
Yeah.
Please. That year we had small issues. It was new and John and I were still figuring out living together. We also all worked together, so it was a lot of time together and not enough time alone. During this time, Jane was dating a guy that was married but planning to leave her. Aren't they all? So the whole time Jane stayed with us, all she did was cry about her man. At one point, I even stopped her and told her I needed a friend to listen to me vent. However, she just cried more about her own problems and then disappeared before I ever got a word in. Now, mind you, I'm painfully shy and extremely passive until I'm pushed to a limit, and then I'm a bombshell. So I never pushed her for conversation, but I did always assume that as a friend, she would eventually listen to me. You would hope. Well, this went on for the winter, and I slowly started to hold on to these feelings of regret because the entire time she was staying with us, she was being a bad roommate on top of being a poor friend. That is not good.
That's a terrible combo.
She would constantly leave her elderly dog out of its kennel because she felt bad, but then the dog would get into the trash or use the bathroom on the carpet. Yoicks.
To be fair, though, I do feel bad for dogs that are just in a kennel all the time. But a kennel is a tool, and you can use it very well. And a lot of times, psychologically, dogs feel they feel secure in a kennel. You just have to make it
depends on how you're using it.
You know, put some fluff stuff in there.
Since I was always first home, I wasn't just going to leave the messes on my floor. I never made her feel bad for it, though. Just repeatedly suggested she kennel it. She would leave bags of food in the room, and we never had any problems with ants until she started staying there. No!
Dude, I hate ants.
Ants!
The creepy, crawly little ants.
One time, I went up into her room and found a BK cup tipped over, spilling onto my cloth dresser. Still, I kept letting things go, reminding myself she'd be gone once summer hit, and she was. Well, this year comes along, and John and I think, maybe it'll be better. We had more time to get ourselves together. John has a new job, which keeps him away most days, and it'll be nice to have the company of my best friend again. John was hesitant, but agreed because I promised it'd be different. That's on you. Honestly, that's on you now, because you already live with her, and you know exactly how she is. That's on you.
Putting that on you. You think she's going to change. She ain't changing.
Did you have any proof? Your proof was that John has a job, and it was just different worse. Now, Jane is with, let's call him Richard for obvious reasons. Richard, he's a 45-year-old man with a daughter of his own, and all he does is verbally abuse Jane. He tells her things like, I've never seen anyone put on weight as fast as you. And yet Jane won't leave Richard, which is, whatever, not my place to tell her, especially since John and I started off rocky, though not that rocky. And we were also 21 and 19 respectively, but still, I wouldn't have a problem with Richard. But one time, Jane forgot her phone at his house during one of their arguments. I saw him on our Ring camera and sent her a text saying, hey, I can't get to the door, but I see Richard is here. Everything okay? Richard proceeds to text me aggressively about how he knows Jane and I are talking because we're texting. Well, Jane had nothing but a phone and Richard had it. Oh, her only device was a phone and Richard had that phone.
It's like, that's like the same thing as that's almost the equivalent, I feel like, of like someone having your passport.
Yeah.
Not being allowed access to like a phone or like to communicate.
Yeah, and for him to be like, I know you're texting. You have her. How is she texting anyone?
She's not. You have her phone.
You literally have her phone. But needless to say, I now have beef with some man I could take out at the knees. Richard apologized to me by telling Jane he was sorry and to tell me. And I'm not sure about you all, but I didn't feel like he was apologizing to me. It felt like he was apologizing to Jane about me, and she just vomited out the same words to me. This man called me immature, stupid, and implied I was a witch because he didn't like what I was saying. This 45-year-old man with his own daughter. Nevertheless, Jane and Richard have caused several issues, from screaming outside my house in front of my nosy neighbors, who happen to be friends with my mother, to Jane showing up at my front door with arms filled with luggage, a dog kennel, and even her off-leash dog running amok. I no longer have any respect for Richard and his childish nature, and I've made it clear he's not welcome here. Not to mention the room. Same things happened. Jane wouldn't kennel her dog. The dog made messes. I constantly cleaned them up. I never made a big deal out of it, as I have 4 of my own animals, including 1 dog. And I understand these things happen.
She's not cleaning up after her own dog.
Why did you invite her back?
It's your dog. You have to clean up after your dog.
Whatever, I didn't work. She'd leave her dog for me to babysit, and she would pay me in a few plants. But what John and I really wanted was just for her to deal with her own dog.
Exactly.
Then she finally kenneled the dog, and the dog ruined my curtains. They weren't that expensive, so I wasn't going to pressure her or be mean about it. However, in the moment, it was upsetting. So I left the damaged curtain on top of the dog kennel, hoping she'd just apologize and we could move on. She didn't. That was months ago, and now she says, I never knew. The room itself is about 10 by 8, which is very, very small. It's basically a large closet. How she didn't notice something in that space is amazing. True talent. We did raise her rent for this winter to $275. Still extremely cheap. We did raise her rent for this room to $275. Still extremely cheap, as someone else offering a room near us is charging $650 and only went down to $600 upon Jane's request, and I'll never be there. We were even willing to lower our $275 because we felt it was too much for what she was getting. In the house that cost $600, she wouldn't even have her own bathroom. So realizing now, Jane has a pretty good deal here just with rent alone. Not to mention, she leaves an item trail from our front door up our stairs, across the landing, and to her room. Also, mind you, she has an elderly small dog, and I have a very young medium dog. I have made a secure, safe place on our stairs for the elderly dog, including giving up an entire laundry basket so that he has a place to sleep. She not only doesn't secure him on the stairs, meaning he can get into her room and trash it, but she will fill his basket with shoes and then leave him on the stairs knowing he has nowhere to lay. She's a terrible dog owner.
Yeah, people like this should not own animals.
On top of that, Jane will then leave water bowls all over the footing of the stairs where we often step and spill them.
Ugh.
Stop.
And I guarantee you, she's like, that's your fault.
Yeah, she's like, why'd you step on them? The stairs are carpeted. No, John and my entire house is carpeted, except for the bathrooms and kitchen. Looking back, I could have trapped him in her bathroom, but it gets so hot upstairs, I was always concerned for Jane's dog. Meanwhile, she was off fighting with Richard over the dumbest things, like her acne and how he's making Rudolph jokes towards her.
Rudolph? Oh.
Because she's got acne. Now the trash. We have never had problems with ants, but this year, weirdly, we do. We know that someone in the house is constantly leaving trash in the room. So I openly confront Jane about the ants and the trash. A week later, we're back to leaving trash and my dishes upstairs.
Well, why don't we just look at the ants as like a free, protein subscription? You've got a trail of protein that walks in by itself every day. All you got to do is pick them up and pop them in your mouth. Now you've got free ant protein. They don't even taste like anything, guys. They're just ants. They're so small, they don't taste like anything.
Again,
Tastes like dirt.
OP's saying, we never had problems with ants. You had problems with ants.
You did.
When Jane was there.
Crazy.
Consider it mocked.
Consider it mocked.
Man, oh man, does this girl order DoorDash. My parents know I can barely work, yet they see a constant flow of DoorDash and Amazon packages. Is this our house? And I'm sure they're wondering where I get the money.
Out, girl.
Funny enough, it isn't mine. She has no care to hide the fact that she is not supposed to be living here and has had no problem risking it for John and me. And although I'm sure I could sway my own mother into letting us keep her, why would Jane want to put me in the position to have that conversation when we're already doing her a solid by letting her stay here for the winter. Oh, did I not mention the dishes? Jane would use our dishes, which is fine, even though we primarily use paper dishes. So I was almost solely washing what she used. But I even told her, don't worry about washing them because I'm OCD. It'd be better if I did it. It was fine until she started bringing her personal dishes she bought down for me to wash. I still did it because I didn't think too much about it. I'm already doing dishes, right? It's not that any of these things alone are that big of a problem. It's that it kept going. Jane kept taking more and more and more. And if all that wasn't enough, wait until you hear about the laundry.
Wait, but what do you mean, OP? Your perspective is all wrong. It's like not that any of these things alone they're all problems for someone who's paying essentially $5 to live in an entire like bedroom, bathroom, like utilities paid, like all this. That's a huge problem.
And I would feel bad for you, OP, if you didn't invite her back.
Yeah, well, clearly OP doesn't really think that there's that much of a problem going on here.
You frustrate me. Our basement is a Michigan basement. It's gross and I'm embarrassed by it. It also contains our washer and dryer. To avoid my embarrassment, I sucked it up and told her I'd wash her clothes.
Stop it. See, this is the problem. You're enabling all of this behavior by not like putting your foot down.
I no longer feel bad for you. When the story started, I felt bad for you. Now you know, and you knew in advance what she was like, and you're just letting her get away with everything.
It's all part of the payment plan at this point.
Jane is literally seeing how far she can go and getting away with everything.
And apparently it's very far.
Extremely far.
With a few exceptions, such as bringing them down on Mondays when I do laundry.
That's the exception. What?
What are we talking about?
She never did.
You're her maid.
And she never did. She'd wait weeks and pile up loads of clothes and then just smile and say, sorry, I'm a POS, but and that's not even an exaggeration, that's verbatim. On top of that, she'd wear several outfits a day. I'd watch her change her clothes 6 times in one day. How many different outfits do you need? We live in a town with less than 10,000 people. Who are you dressing up for? And she never once thought, oh, I wear a lot. Maybe I should take some clothes somewhere else. She just assumed that I would wash all of them with no problem. I finally stopped asking her to bring them down because it wasn't my problem. And that's Jane's favorite thing to say, it's not my responsibility. She's 28 years old and still hasn't learned that sometimes we take on others' responsibilities just because we are farmers. I mean adults. Jane wouldn't offer to work a shift for me on my birthday because it wasn't her responsibility. And then after making me feel guilty for even implying she could work it, she tried to make me feel guilty for not just asking her. As if it wasn't hard hearing her witch and moan about, well, why can't this 16-year-old kid with 3 brain cells do it by themselves? And the 16-year-old kid is a cool kid. No hate against them, but they can't do my job. If I need them as backup and I've been doing it for almost 10 years, then why would they be able to do it alone after a year? You might ask yourselves, I thought you said winters, but it's fall now, and this all sounds recent. That's because Jane decided with Richard that she wasn't going away for the summer. Jane didn't ask John or me. Jane just assumed we'd be okay with it because if you can't gather, we're good people. And I am a people pleaser, sadly. Yeah, yes. That's obvious.
You got the CPP.
Put your foot down, please.
It's true that what you're doing is arguably good from an optic standpoint, but like if you really broke it down, what you're doing is bad because you're enabling this person to live in fairy tale fantasy land where they don't have to change any of their bad behavior or do anything in order to like survive in reality. Yeah. So you're not doing them any favors. You're kind of, they're being stunted and they need to wake up to the reality that they.
Not to mention that we are extremely against the use of hard substances. To each their own, but family has affected both John's and my lives with substances such as crystals.
Such as the Walter White.
I was just going to say crystals. And spicy flour.
Christology.
And so we aren't here for it. Jane once showed up at 4 a.m. very wasted, yet very hyper. It didn't take a genius to figure out she had snorted spicy flour.
She took a dance in the spicy flour.
While staying under my roof, knowing my feelings on the matter. Some have even said Richard is supplying Jane, and that's why she stays. It breaks my heart.
I've seen that happen a couple times.
That's rough.
Yeah. Sometimes. So don't stay away from the spicy flour, kids.
Yes. And I told her if she did it again under my roof, she'd be gone for good because we just don't move like that. Unrelated, but I had a coworker try to OD thinking that I would save him. What? I only offered to let him shower because his water was turned off and I was trying to be a good person. Needless to say, he went to jail shortly after that for unrelated incidents.
Needless to say?
Unrelated? Who is this person?
Needless to say,
what was that about?
where did that come from?
Probably for the best. Bless his soul. But that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to why we don't like the use of hard substances. So I've repeatedly given the girl everything just to be ignored and taken advantage of. And when I say ignored, I mean ignored. I'm not going to pretend I'm perfect. I'm petty for sure. And my personal emotions have spilled out into irrelevant conversations with Jane. And I've gotten snippy over work-related things that I definitely shouldn't have. But she thought, oh, there's something wrong. Maybe if I avoid and ignore her and plan to move out without saying anything, everything will be fine. I didn't know she was planning to finally move out after 6+ months, even though it was supposed to be 3 at max. So I finally confront her about rent. See, Jane, thought you paid for rent at the end of the month. She paid for the month of July on July 19th and called it early. And I just laughed and shrugged it off. At least we were getting the rent, right? LOL. I finally tell her today, rent for August is due. And if you plan to be here for September, then it needs to be paid within the first week. She proceeds to tell me how I've been rude towards her. Ha! I have been. It's been deserved. The only time I felt I could get a word in between her complaining about work or Richard was when I was being rude. I suppose I'm sorry for that, but should I be? I have asked her, told her, we need to talk. I really need a friend. And then when I wasn't ready, the one and single time she wanted to talk, she took that as, we just don't need to anymore. She just assumed I'd text her my issues, even though she made it very, very clear she doesn't like texting conversations like that. But now I'm sitting here wondering, am I the a-hole? After 2 years of this, of feeling unheard and used after trying to give Jane a second chance, I feel like I am because I finally let it all out. Am I the a-hole? And there are some comments which I need to read before we say anything further.
Oh, come on. All right.
Comment 1. Oh, wow. This is a bad situation you and John have gotten yourselves into again.
Yeah.
I do feel bad for you. Here's what I think would help. First, you should not be hiding a tenant from your mother. That's dishonest and wrong. She holds the mortgage and deed on the house for you and gives you a break on your rent amount. She would not have agreed to a sloppy tenant with an animal and bug infestations in her house. That's messed up too. I didn't even think about it. I forgot that your mom was your landlord basically.
I also forgot
And you're hiding a tenant from her? Is that true? Is that what happened? So second, you need to give Jane notice that she has to move out ASAP. She has been careless with her tenancy length, month-to-month rent payments, and extensions. So just get her out.
You ready for this? I found it. Literally the opening paragraph. Let me start with this. My boyfriend and I were put into a very lucky situation with a house. However, it is still in my mother's name and she can easily evict us.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah. So the
Nice.
mother is the landlord, and you guys are deceiving your mom.
The great
Yeah,
deceiver.
you're the a-hole. You're the a-hole a little bit.
Everybody's right?
Yeah. Third, try to work on your passive aggressiveness. It is pretty severe. You bottle up a lot, seethe behind your teeth, and then explode. You say you're a people pleaser, but this is not pleasing. This is
Nice.
This does not please me.
Please yourself.
This is highly dysfunctional and not fair to you or the people around you. Lastly, when you have good information about a person or a situation, believe yourself. Exactly. You know you never should have had her there in the first place, let alone allowed her back for a second year. You have to trust yourself that you have a good head on your shoulders and can show good judgment. So follow it. Listen to yourself and to John. He knew better too, but you didn't listen to him either. Good luck. And that is the end of that story, but I fully agree with that comment. Get her out of there. She
It's
needs to
time.
be gone.
She needs to be vamoosed.